Alright, we got the 2001 F-550 here. Barely fit in the shop, it's pretty tight. But for some reason this guy, whenever it's cold, it's getting hard to crank. I replaced the glow plug relay, tested a bunch of other stuff. It's kind of strange. If I come back the next day after I've cranked it, even if it's in the 30s, it was cranking right back up. But the ohm reading on the glow plug showed quite a few of them weren't good, so I'm gonna do a video of how to replace them. So we got a 7.3 liter diesel engine here. One of what I would say is Ford's best ones I've made lately. I'm not a big fan of the other ones right now. But you got the pipes going to the turbo, and you got your air intake and your battery housing case. To get to this valve cover, looks like we'll probably need to take all that stuff off. By the way, I'm not a mechanic, just going to show you guys where you can learn from my mistakes. And by the way, diesels do have 2 batteries, so make sure you take both of them loose. I know it sounds pretty stupid, but if you were to leave the positive over there, you could definitely ground out on something, make a little welder. It'd be pretty nice. But inside here, there's a little thing we got to take out, and I'll let you know what size it is. But 12mm sockets fit my battery post. It was a 8mm socket to get the little part out of here the battery was attached to. And then we've got some other bolts over here that looks to be about a 13mm. There's 2 right there, and then over on the wall there's 2 more. And I notice there's some up here. We'll see what all we have to take out, but getting this battery and air assembly out is going to make it a lot easier to get to. There is a sensor back in the back of your little air intake box. Make sure to disconnect that thing. That way you can take the whole thing out. And it's a little heavier than I thought. I don't know if I can get it with one hand. And there's the air assembly out. And I like to, if you can get access to them, I'm a big Harbor Freight endorser. Those little magnetic dishes make life a lot easier when you're putting stuff back together. But here's the truck with the air assembly out. A lot more room. Next thing we're going to try to do, get this hose right here off. Probably end up having to take the mass connector with all your wiring loose. And it looks pretty dirty inside of there. Probably going to end up cleaning all these tubes while I got them out too. But we'll be back. Here's a shot with our tube out. You can see the turbo inside of there. Makes it a little easier to get out. Ended up being 13mm for the where the hose connected down here and where it connects up here. If you take a screwdriver and kind of help to pry it out, those blue things seem to be pretty tough, the tubing that connects it, and it helps it to get out a lot easier. Next thing we're going to get out is going to be our mass connector for the power here. So our connector ended up being a 10mm. Came off pretty good. Try to get our light to go on here. And the pins actually look pretty oxidized inside of there. So I'm going to use some deoxit or any type of contact cleaner. And the other side didn't look much better. But need to have real good connections. Make sure everything's going good. So it's 28 degrees out here this morning, so I went ahead and set up our little propane tank and got our lights on. But we're about to start taking out a bunch of bolts to get the valve covers off. And did some research about all that oil that's there. This CCV crankcase valve will escape guy for pressure. I heard it's a pretty common problem with letting it escape up into the air intake. Causes some pretty nasty oil leaks and things, so there's a modification I might try doing later on that. But we'll go ahead and start taking some valve cover bolts out. And after you've got the bracket right here undone, it's probably going to be a good idea to take this CCV off. On the top it's just got a Phillips head, another Phillips head. You can tell mine's got a bunch of oil. I'm going to try to reroute it. But the good thing you need to do on these to remember is to get new O-rings, because if not, you'll definitely have a mess. Alright, so finally got all the bolts out. They're all very easy to get out, except for the very last one back in the back, and you'll probably need to use a universal. And it's real easy to Cut your finger wide open getting it out. But since we got the valve covers off, what we're looking for, we'll see if we can get a light to shine in there, is right by the injector. The little white wire right there is actually the boot, kind of like on the spark plug that goes on the glow plug. Just take those boots off. I think it's a 10mm socket. You have to use a deep well thin socket, and you have to be super careful not to break the glow plug's tip off, because if it falls down in your cylinder, you kind of have to do a lot more work, almost rebuild the engine. But about to start taking those guys out, and I've got some fuel line that fit right over the tip of a glow plug, because you can kind of get it loose with the 10mm socket, and you need to finish it off with that fuel line, make it a lot easier. Alright, got 4 of the glow plugs out, about to put in the new ones. But it definitely made it a lot easier using our heater hose here, and just put it over the top of where the glow plug was, and then you can use it to unscrew it, because you would definitely bottom out your socket on the rocker arms. It makes it pretty hard. And it looks like this one might have had an injector replaced, because the cover on the last one just looks a lot different. And while you're in there, if you can, go ahead and inspect your connector. Make sure it's not coming apart. Ford's been pretty bad, I've read on the internet, about this part completely coming apart. And they've got a modification piece that you can buy, and I've seen some people use some quarters, but mine was together and still doing good, so I'm going to keep going. Alright, got it back together on this side. Gigantic hose here is coming off of, it's hard to see, maybe I can get a light. Coming off the back of the doghouse in the CCV, and I'm going to route it. I went up over the brake master cylinder, that way hoping that the oil will just run back down. Then I routed it down, going under the frame, and going to route it as long as it's behind the cab. I think we'll be good. But now it's time to move on to that side. So it looks like on this side, not going to have to remove near as much as the other side. Hoping that we can pull just this hose right here off, and hopefully have a pretty clear shot at it. I'm sure there's some easier way to do it, but this bracket here, it seems to be a lot easier to take the bolts off of it, lift it up, and then you can take your turbo arm and get it out a whole lot easier, especially if you're not holding the camera. It definitely slips out a lot easier. And our little heater hose clamp guys that are on the valve cover on this side, if you can just take a flathead screwdriver and they just kind of pry off. And if your engine's ever got hot, they're probably stuck on there pretty good. So I hope this doesn't happen to you guys, but it looks like our dipstick valve cover nut welded itself to the bracket. So I took a pair of vice grips, held onto them, and then broke the weld. Alright, we got the valve cover off, and we'll do the same thing we did on this side to get the glow plugs out. I found it really easy if you can use a small 13mm with a stubby nose universal. Worked really good to get this side off. This side came off so much faster than the other side. Alright, finally got it buttoned back up. Done for the day, I hope. But it's got 8 new glow plugs. It's looking pretty sharp. Got the turbo hooked back up. Battery, all that stuff's reconnected. Made sure to reconnect all of this little gizmo of the wiring harness here. Ended up the dipstick was a little bit bent, so I had to spend about 20 minutes getting it to where it'll go back in and out. But got everything shot back. And by the way, make sure to buy Motorcraft glow plugs. O'Reilly's has them. I heard the auto light ones will swell up, and if you ever have to change them again, they'll break off and you have to rebuild your engine. So that's not a good thing at all. But about to test it out and hoping that it'll work. I could not get this thing to crank at all without being plugged in for about 3 to 4 hours with the glow plug. I mean, with the heater. So we'll wait and see what happens here. Got our wait to start. And I'm just going to go ahead and try to fire it right after the wait to start goes off. Yes, that is a good thing. I've read also that sometimes you can do the wait to start about 6 or 7 times if it's a real cold morning. It's still about probably 38, 40 degrees here. But man, I'm glad that worked. But hope this video helps you guys out. And if you have any questions, you can post them on there and I'll try to get back as soon as I can. But like I said, I'm not a nurse. I mean, not I'm not a mechanic. I'm actually a nurse and on an audio company. But this guy's got 220,000 miles and hoping to get about another 250 out of it. I hope it helped. Thank you guys.